Hey guys, what's up? Today I'll show you the 10 hardest JRPGs released in North America that I have ever played. That's right, there are a lot of really tough action JRPGs, but if they aren't on this list, it's because I didn't find them that hard, or because I barely play them, or because I just haven't played them. So these are the hardest, as usual, in my personal opinion. Let's begin! Number 10, Ys 3. This game came out on several different platforms, mostly from the 16-bit era. It also got a remake on the PSP, which is equally unforgiving. I had to finish that one on easy mode, otherwise I never would have made it past the second boss. Genesis, TurboGrafx and Super Nintendo versions are obviously harder with no easy mode available. The greatest flaw in those is the side-scrolling. You move too fast, which makes it hard to react or to spot the upcoming enemies in time. Often you'll have to walk slow to avoid any damage, since of course Adol is a weak-ass character almost the entire game. Sometimes it might take longer than usual to kill one of the enemies, so if others are nearby, it could be extremely dangerous. Boss fights, however, is where it spikes atrociously, even on the beautiful PSP remake, but since the game's 16-bit versions played like side-scrollers, it means you gotta learn the patterns quickly or it's game over for you and back to the beginning. Limited inventory, lack of checkpoints, clumsy controls, faster than necessary. I think this is by far the hardest Ys game of all time, especially if you play these old versions, or its remake on normal difficulty. Number 9, Drakengard 2. I wanted to include also Drakengard 1, but I didn't play that one enough because its controls and camera are beyond my taste. The second game plays far better and I can make a whole objective case about it. I won't, cause today I'm here to complain about its ridiculous difficulty. For the first missions, it'll be manageable, challenging but not too hard. It starts spiking once you get your second character. To begin with, the gameplay resembles a Warriors game sometimes in the Musou style, so missions can be very long, meaning if you die, you'll be back at the start since there are no checkpoints whatsoever. That alone should tell you how brutal this game can be. Of course, the enemy AI keeps getting better and tougher as you make progress, not to mention they can overwhelm you in no time, else you keep dying at the several traps. You also have a limited inventory, which is normal, but for a game as hard as this with no checkpoints, is suicidal. The dragon missions are very hard too sometimes, but not really compared to the long ass missions or the boss fights. There's an easy difficulty, but it's also quite challenging on it. I think the first game might be harder, but I never made it that far to have an opinion about it. Number 8, Trinity Souls of Zeal. Omega Force developed this third entry in an extremely obscure series never localized, except for this one of course. It's also a game with an easy and normal difficulty, except the normal difficulty can be pretty much interpreted as hard. I was halfway through the game when I just couldn't take it anymore and changed it to easy. During the first several hours you'll be fine on normal until the game starts spamming elite monsters all over the place. You can switch between your 3 playable characters to play around with the enemy's weaknesses, and it does make a difference. Not against the boss fights, which are stupidly long and hard. What makes them so frustrating and challenging are the hit areas. Those ring-like circles that appear so quickly so you can attack the boss with something they're weak against. But like I said, most of the time they just appear too quickly and you're either too busy finishing a combo or casting a spell to use them. You also have a very limited inventory. It lets you bring only 5 healing potions and 5 resurrection items. Other than that, the game's pretty forgiving with several save points throughout the dungeons or areas, and always before a major boss fight. Number 7. Baroque. Baroque also came out on the Wii. It's an action RPG alright, but it has roguelike elements. For example, every time you enter a dungeon, it will be randomly generated, just like the enemies and the location of items. Most roguelike games are known to be hard. Baroque stands out for being both bad and hard. It's bad because the controls and hit detection are far from great, working only on some enemies, and sometimes the camera only makes the colors of the game look even worse. As you can tell, it's quite dark and hard to see. So with a bad cam, it's just awful in some areas. Can you imagine now the terrible sense of direction you'll have? Most areas look exactly the same, just like the enemies you defeated. Due to the bad camera and dark graphics, they can ambush you or kill you without you even noticing. Of course, if you die in these types of games, it's back to the entrance of the dungeon with all your levels lost. It's brutal, but it can be done. Except why would you need it done if it's bad? Number 6. Lord of Arcana. This is a game where you create and customize your main character, you take it to missions where you'll grind for experience in a very responsive battle system. Each button holds a different attack or action, including spells or buffs. There's also the coup de grace system, which involves doing a finishing blow once the enemy's HP goes down enough. But it really is a game that focuses on the epic boss fights. I don't have a problem with the controls, the camera, or the combat interface I mentioned. It isn't perfect, but it works just fine. The difficulty in this game comes from just that, from being difficult. They just wanted to make a very challenging game with some Monster Hunter elements. Everything you do here is just to build up the tension you'll liberate during these boss fights. And they also include some cinematic stuff and even quick time events to make them less tedious. I say this because it will take you several minutes to bring down one of these guys no matter how experienced you are. So yeah, nothing convoluted here, it's just a game that is hard. Too hard. Number 5. Vagrant Story. Vagrant Story's battle mechanics are actually easy to understand, but very hard to master. You gotta attack a certain part of the enemy's body in order to take them down. Guessing which part is the best one is hard, and you'll never know until you actually target them all. Regular enemies are kinda easy to be honest, but I imagine they get harder late in the game. Bosses are the problem as usual. It just takes a lot of time to figure out where to hit them, and even if you do it quickly, they still take some time to go down. Meanwhile, your main character gets all the damage to his fragile body. The technical aspects of this battle system also include accessories and a variety of spells, which go from attack or even debuffs. So like I said, it's easy to understand, just very hard to properly exploit, which in my opinion makes this game tough to get into. At least for me. Number 4. Demon's Souls. At least one of the Souls games needed to be here, and this one sure puts them all to shame! It was the first one on the series, published by Atlus in North America on the PS3. That's the version I played, not the PS5 remake. I don't think I need to explain why this tough bastard is on the list. I think the game's so well known and the entire world already bitched about its difficulty. The one thing that gives it extra points for my behalf is the lack of checkpoints, or in this case, save points. You die far ahead after miraculously surviving for so long, and you go back to the last save. That's exactly what makes this game so unforgiving, because it plays with your head, how you start getting good at the first enemies, only to die miserably with the ones several minutes later. Going back and doing it all over again gives you practice and experience, sure, but getting better at this game just takes forever. Number 3. Crystalis. It's no surprise that an NES game would make it here. Several others could have been here too, but I decided to choose only one to be fair and to give this video variety, and it just so happens that I chose the most unfair of them all. First of all, like many games of its time, it's just too cryptic. Often you have no idea where to go because one character tells you to go north, then another to go south, then another to go into the forest, then it's a dead end. You can't just attack an enemy with a few slashes and succeed. Every action needs to be carefully planned, so it's very technical, like the previous game in this list. That's right, Crystallis did it first, though I might be exaggerating a little on that. However, it's no exaggeration that the game's too hard and that you can die easily with just a few hits, especially because each one pushes you away, so if there's another enemy nearby, it's a guaranteed gangbang. Bosses also require several tries, as you may have guessed. You gotta know the patterns, and on top of everything, you'd need to be really skillful to move around to evade their attacks. I'm really grateful for save states nowadays, cause playing the original cartridge back in the day without them must have been brutal. Number 2. Popful Mail. This is actually a remake of the Super Famicom game we never got. Working Designs released it exclusively on the Sega CD and completely annihilated the localization's difficulty. It's 10 times harder than the Japanese versions for no goddamn reason! It plays like a side-scroller with some Metroidvania aspects, but make no mistake, it's an action RPG. You often find towns, talk to people, accept side quests, buy items and accessories, gain experience by defeating monsters, etc. The biggest issue with this North American version defaults in the enemies. They're just too strong, too clever, with patterns that are almost impossible to memorize. You start with only Popful, the cute redhead, but later you get 2 more characters that you can switch to at any given time. All 3 of them, however, are weaklings that die with just a few hits, especially with the bosses. And now that I've mentioned the bosses, some like this freaking golem are too damn hard to take down. Imagine trying to hit its head a few times while it keeps jumping around like crazy. Stages aren't inferior to the boss fights, some of them can be pretty unforgiving as well. Sometimes you'll drop down and die because you didn't know what was down there. Touching certain foes or objects can also accelerate your doom. It's brutal, man, and Working Designs just messed up the difficulty just to piss you off. Number 1. The Kingsfield games. All of them. In all honesty, I just couldn't pick one. We got 3 games in this series, except the first one. I get the feeling it's probably the hardest. And we also got this horrible abomination called Shadow Tower, which is just as hard. Now, these games are cleverly done wrong on purpose to make them extremely tough. In every one of them you start with an impossibly useless character that can die with just a few hits. To make matters worse, the controls suck ass and are as slow as you can imagine. The hit detection works actually, but it rarely lets you know if you hit anything, meaning you've no idea if you're actually doing damage until the enemy dies or you're dead. The cryptiness is by far the hardest aspect of these assholes. From the beginning, you've no clue what to do or where to go. Only option is to explore as much as you can, so you get more experience on the way, and also whatever random armor or items you can find. However, no matter where you go, most places look the same, and getting lost is very, very easy. These games are stupidly hard for all the aforementioned reasons. Up to a point, they're literally unplayable for me. They do have their fans, and I respect that, but these aren't for me, especially for being also on first person. You know, I could have included more games from Software, more Souls games, Bloodborne for example, or any other action RPG from the 8-bit era or the 16-bit era, but I just didn't want this video to be full of the same games from the same eras and same companies. So those were my picks for today's video, and remember, if you didn't find any of these games or some of these games that hard, remember to tell your parents or somebody in your family, because those are the only people who might actually give a damn. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!